So we had to, so to recap here, we had a request to go back through some practical applications here. We had the printouts. By the way, how's the practicing been going?
I've been a bad student.
Yeah, I wasn't as good this week as I was the previous.
I went to the adult learning. I couldn't find the thing. Is it supposed to be on YouTube?
No, it's on our adult ed webpage.
Couldn't find it.
It's there.
Just now I went in there, and it got dropped down really far down the list. So I moved it back up a little bit just so you guys could find it because you're looking there for materials.
You did find it? I don't know.
So here's what's on that page. It has copies of the PDFs of all the printouts we've had. So that includes the 2 samples of Haftarahs. It includes the blessings before. The blessing after is now in there. It wasn't before. I just put that in there now. The recordings for the blessings before and after are in there both now. I also have,
Where do you go?
So if you go to the main B'nai Yeshurun webpage and then you click the drop down menu for adult ed, you click
is under learn.
On the,
learn adult ed,
Adult education.
wait a second.
B'naiYeshurun.org.
On the, okay.
B'naiYeshurun.org.
On your phone.
It's
Yeah.
fine.
I don't do. Yeah, it's like a weird layout sometimes.
I'm in there. I see the Trope packet, blessing before Haftarah, blessing after, and then I see.
All the Haftarah Trope recordings are in there, including the end of a Haftarah reading. It's also in there now too. I did that last week.
Okay.
Getting
So
blind.
I've been updating at each class as we've been going along. And after today, assuming we do get through some Torah tropes towards the end of this class, I will be putting those up there too. So you can use the same trope packet. We're gonna do Torah tropes. Do you remember, you guys remember what's the main difference between Torah trope and Haftarah trope?
Major
Major and minor. Torah trope is
is
major
major.
and Haftarah trope is minor. Good, okay.
And what if you have your tone deaf? That's
Um,
my issue.
well, can you hear the difference between these two? Tevir, tevir.
Yeah,
Yeah. Doesn't mean that we can. Or me.
So I'm going-
I can.
It takes training. You can train your ear if you're not sure. You can train your ear a little bit. So, okay, so we're gonna go through, there was a request to get through some practical experience. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna go through verse 5 of Haftarah Vayechi. Because Haftarah Vayechi, verse 5 is long. A lot of different tropes in it. So it's really good practice to break that down. You can use your highlighters. That's an extra here for anyone who needs. Does anybody else need more highlighters? So if anyone needs extra highlighters, I'm gonna put them over here. More of you on this side. Oop, that's gonna roll away. Okay, so we're gonna go through verse 5. So starting with the first 3 words, V'gam ata yadata. Do you recognize what kind of trope phrase this is?
This is the special.
Special tropes 2. Specifically, the backwards 4 is what trope? Hazer. We got munach, hazer. So special tropes 2, you would not highlight. You need a copy?
Okay.
which one are you looking at?
Haftarah
By a fee.
I think. We
Yeah.
got it the first-
Yes.
It was in the first packet that I picked up.
Okay,
Got it.
you got it?
Oh, here, this one,
I'll get extra copies if you need it.
that one. Haftarah,
We're in verse 5. So the words vegam ata yadata. So you would not highlight these because special tropes 2 don't get highlighted. But you've got 2 options. Remember how I told you some people like to do the munach only before a mafsik, right? Like the bar, right? Some people do them anytime you see a munach. I'm of the latter party, so I would do munach, pazer. Right here. That's what I would do right here. So why don't we try that? Do you guys need to try it on the tropes first, or can we put it straight on the words?
Go straight on.
Right on the words. Okay, so we're gonna do vegam ata yadata. Ready? Vegam ata yadata. Good. What about 8? What kind of trope is that? So remember, Tlisha Ketana. So if we put that on the word, it's eight. Again, you would not highlight that. Okay, then we come to Asher Asali, Yoav Ben Sruya. What type of trope phrase is that? Revi'i, nachon. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 words that we're gonna highlight in what color? Blue. So I count as one word when it's hyphenated. So yeah, so Asher Asa Li Yoav Ben Sruya. You might have noticed I said Asher Asa, not Asher Asa. Look at where the trope is, right? Asher Asa in this case. Normally it would be Asa, but here it's Asa. Okay, so can we try that on the words? Oh, well, I'll wait for everybody to highlight first. Ben Sruya. Yeah,
We stop there.
at Ben Sruya, the one with the diamond over it, that one still gets highlighted blue.
Revi.
But I didn't do, I highlighted the share after. I'm not supposed
Yep, Asher does not get highlight.
to.
That's a, you can draw like a pencil mark or something.
I think.
We're starting at Ben Sruya, that's the last word we're highlighting for now. Right?
Wait a minute, a share is not highlighted?
Asher Asa is, Asher Asa Li Yoav Ben Sruya, not the Asher after that.
When I made the mistake, don't listen to me.
Okay, so we're gonna try chanting Asher Asa from there, ready? Asher Asa Li Yoav Ben Sruya. Okay, here you have is one of a few examples that you sometimes will see, just a bunch of munachs all in a row. Here it does not have the masik, so it doesn't even have that. So you could do munach, 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 till Isha gedolah. Right?
But under the lishne is a mafsik. There is something there.
Where?
Under the lishne.
There's not a mafsik.
So what is this?
The med tag we talked about. Does anybody remember what a med tag is? It tells us what? Syllable stress, right? In this case, because it's a hyphenated word, you have multiple syllable stress. Lishne sare, right? You got 2 syllable stresses in that word. It's hyphenated, but the stress of the trope will go on sare, re. But there is technically lishne sare, right? All right. So do you guys want to hear it first, or do you want to try it all together? You want to hear it first?
Yeah.
Okay. Asher Asa Lishne Sare Sivot Israel. Okay, so can we try that together? Ready? Asher Asa Sivot Israel. Good. Now you've got 2 options for the next one. Le'avner ben ner. You see a kadma ve'azla, right?
Yeah.
So I did mention this, I think, before. Sometimes you will have kadma ve'azla without a revi'i afterwards. So when that happens, you have the option to either leave it blank or to highlight it blue, because you would often see it with blue. So whichever way is going to help you more, I'd say dealer's choice on that one. Okay. So you can either highlight just those 2 words blue, or you can leave them blank. All right, but can we chant those ones together? The Avner ben ner, ready? The Avner ben ner. Good, all right, so then we've got Villa Amasa, then Yeter, Veya Hargem. What kind of phrase is that? The yellow one, yes. Kata. Kata, correct. So those words, Villa Amasa, then Yeter, Vaya Hargem. Those 3 words are going to highlight yellow. Okay, and you see Vaya Hargem, you see there's actually 2 tropes in one word.
So ben yeter vayahag.
Oh, please. What's your name? Okay, I heard you were joining today. Let's see, we can give you one of these extra binders. The thing is, we are starting with reviewing the Haftarah tropes, which we already covered. You can watch the rest of our classes on YouTube. So you'll be a little bit behind, but we are going to start on some new stuff today with Torah tropes. So here, I'll give you a copy of this, is what we're reading right now. This is a copy of another one that you can practice from. But you should already have a trope packet in there and the blessings before and after Haftarah. Should check the folder and just make sure. Do you need any help with Hebrew stuff or?
Not really.
Okay. Great. Because I have some like pronunciation guides if you needed it, but if you don't, that's fine.
Do I need a pen?
Yeah, you should have a pencil. Don't worry about it. Everybody else was like too. You were just a little bit later than them.
I'm more Jewish than the rest of us.
So actually, what we did in the first class is we kind of went around and introduced ourselves and what our level of familiarity with tropes or like reading is, if you wouldn't mind. Just
I took a couple of years of Hebrew.
wait, introduce yourself again.
My name is Matt Arnold. I'm a latecomer. I actually had intended to sign up earlier and then got distracted by grad school. And so that's why I'm a couple of weeks behind, but I wanted to jump in and start on Torah trope. I don't know anything about trope so far. I did take a couple of years within the last 5 years of Hebrew, so the pronunciation there shouldn't be,
Great.
the hard part should be the trope.
Right, okay. So to sort of recap you on where we left off, the first class, we went into the history of Haftarah and of trope itself. So if you want to catch up and learn Haftarah, trope, or even learn the background of trope itself, definitely catch the first class. We did go through, I think, all the tropes that time. We reviewed them the second session, and then we started putting it into practice last session.
Are those all recorded?
Those are all recorded. They're all on our YouTube page.
All right, I'll look that up.
So trope class on our YouTube page. They're each about an hour long. So at your leisure, when you have time to catch them up.
Is this also recorded?
This one is also recording right now, yes. So you'll catch whatever you missed. You didn't really miss that much yet. But right now we're looking off of Haftarah Vayechi. We're putting some practical application in verse 5 because there are so many different tropes. So do you know what tropes are? They're the markings.
Yes, they're the cantillation markings, because
Yes.
they're basically three things going on in when it's fully written out. You've got the Hebrew script, you've got the vowel markings, then you have the trope markings.
Yes.
Which are all.
Yes. Yes, but you don't have two out of those three things when you're reading from the Torah. So we'll talk about that too today, because we're going to start on Torah today. We won't have a huge amount of time, but we will start on Torah trope. We should hopefully get through the Torah tropes today at the end. Okay, so we just covered, let's see, we're in verse 5. Oh wait, we were just highlighted V'la amasa ven yeter vayahar game, right? The third and fourth lines down on the second paragraph in verse 5. We highlighted them yellow to match the katon phrases, right? So let's try, you guys want to put it straight on the Hebrew and try that out?
He needs the pens. He doesn't have there's pens over there.
Oh, here, yeah, there's extra yellows here, but yeah, either way, like you can,
Yeah, because
you probably don't have much introduction. If you take the trope packet out, you'll see what color all the tropes are.
yeah, tell you.
Yeah, I think you can just audit sort of right now and
That's
yeah,
rude.
just audit right now, we'll catch you up on the ones you missed, okay? All right, so we're gonna V'la amasa, ready? V'la amasa ven yeter vayahar. All right, good. So you see vayahar, because there's two tropes in one word. Remember we talked about that? Can anyone answer his question? Why are there two of them in that word? In ven yeter?
Comes at the end, but the middle one's telling you where the emphasis is.
Exactly. She got it right? So the word is yeter, not yeter, right? Segulate nouns, or verbs in Hebrew, right? The two short ones. The first one is always the one that gets the emphasis when you're chanting, unless, well, no, it always does, right? Like, beged or melech, right? It always gets the first. So yeter, then yeter. So it's chanting at a pashta. So the first one is telling you where the stress goes. The second one is telling you that it's a pashta, not a kadma. All right, good question. All right, so now we're at Vayasem Demei Milchama Bishalom. What kind of trope phrase is that?
Etna.
Etna. So that's going to be highlighted what color? Pink. Very good. Oh, wait, you guys. So those are three words. Vayasem Demei Milchama Bishalom. So we're about halfway through the verse, a little more than halfway through the verse at this point. All right. Vayasem Demei Milchama Bishalom. Pink. Okay. So we're going to try those. Ready? Vayasem Demei Milchama Bishalom. Good. Okay. Then we've got Vayitain. Does anyone recognize what kind of trope phrase that is?
Yeah, but
So it's the G. Ger Shayim, it's a Ger Shayim, special tropes one, which you can leave blank. In the packet, it's red, but there's really no red highlighter, so you can leave it blank, just like special tropes too, okay? But it goes Vayiten. Let's try that. Vayiten. All right, then we've got Demei Milchama. What color is that gonna be?
that's.
Revi'i, so it's blue. Good. I'll wait for you to highlight Demei Milchama. Blue. Okay, so it's gonna be, so we're gonna chant that together in a moment. You guys ready? Demei Milchama. All right, then we've got Bachagorato Asher Bitmot Nav. What kind of trope phrase is that? Yellow for katon. Okay, great. So Bachagorato Asher Bimot Nav. Right, you see the Tamatz Katan under the mem, so Bimot Nav.
Finding it so fast.
And once you practice it enough, you got a handle. You build it up with time.
Whenever somebody reads the Torah, I go to the media.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody reads the Torah, I look for the thing and I listen to what they do and I see if
There
I.
you go. Yeah.
When I do that, I can't pay attention to the word.
Yeah.
Like I don't.
It's,
The more you practice, the easier it comes. All right, so let's practice chanting that phrase. Ready? Bachagorato, ready? Bachagorato asher b'modnav. All right, then one more phrase here, which already should tell you what color it's gonna be. It's the end of the verse. Sof pasuk, so that means it's gonna be orange. So, right, that was a pretty long verse, but it had a lot of different examples in it.
so that's, no.
Uvna alo asher beraglav. Right, so that's gonna be, are we ready to chant it? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Uvna alo asher beraglav. Just for fun, let's pretend this is the end of the reading. Can we also try it as a sof? As a sof, like as a sof haftarah. All right. That's what it would sound like if it was the end of the whole thing. Okay. Yes, exactly. Well, blessing after.
Yeah.
So we do need to spend some time going through the blessing after. So, but does anyone want to have more examples before? Do you guys want to go back through the whole verse now that we've done the whole thing? Just go through the whole verse, okay? Ready? From the beginning of 5. Vega ata yada et asher asali yo ben sruya asher asa lishne sare siv Yisrael le'avne ve'amasa ve'yete vayage vayasem d'mei milchama ve'shalom vayite d'mei milchama v'chagorato she all right, you got through a whole long verse just now. Should feel pretty good about yourselves, okay?
If we're ever gonna do this for real, we're gonna have some backup here.
So here's the process. Okay, here's how it works when you do it for real. So when you do it for real, if you're gonna be chanting Haftarah, first of all, you're gonna be called up for the Maftir Aliyah. Okay, so you'll be doing the blessings before and after the Maftir. Oftentimes, we do invite the same person doing the Maftir to just do the Haftarah, and they do the blessings before and after themselves for Maftir, and they go up and do Haftarah. So, but let's say that weren't the case and you were just doing Haftarah. So you would do the blessing before and after the Torah. So we will go through that as well, but I'm sure many of you probably know that one from hearing it so many times. We'll go through it though. So then you would go typically up to my lectern, on the bima. Some people like to stay down, if that's their preference. So either way, you would do the blessing before, which we'll go through again. And then you would do the whole haftarah, and then you would do the blessing after. And then that would be it. We would thank you and you could step down. There's no candy toss unless you're b'nai mitzvah.
Let me tell you two reasons why I prefer down than up.
Sure.
First of all, your mic is staccato. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yesterday
And the
was.
second,
Problems.
Oh, really? With my mic?
No, in general, the
Yeah.
sound was terrible.
Yeah, I know. We're planning. I really hope we can do it before the high holidays. We're hoping to get some sound technicians in. And I know, for example, like the Torah lectern mics actually were pretty weak too.
Oh, it was terrible yesterday.
bad.
I mean, Jan was up there with it on his mouth.
Yeah.
and I could barely hear Jan.
Yeah, I know. So we need to, so my mic on the lectern is better than, is my mic, my lectern at the bima is actually better than the one down there for now, at least. Right now it is,
if
but
you put them both together, it works.
we're gonna work on fixing our sound system.
I'm short.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I cannot, somebody sees me when I'm behind this.
Up and down.
Down, my lectern has the steps. If you need the steps, we give you the steps. Patty Milgram happily takes the steps.
Yeah.
She's 10 years younger than
When she chants Haftarah. So what can I say? We've got tall clergy, so, yeah.
Oh, next time I want to come tall and skinny. In my next life.
So that's how the process will work. If you're, I won't say when you chant Haftarah, not if, when you chant Haftarah, that's how that will work. Okay, so we did that. We can go through the blessing before Haftarah one more time too, because it's good review. But does anyone want to review, does anyone want to practice anything else in here? Because I do want to make sure we leave at least 20 minutes at the end for getting through some background on
There
Torah.
was Something
and
that I was missing, that I
Yeah.
was not. So לשני שרי צבאות, after that for the two,
Which one?
the two Israel.
Oh, in verse 5?
You just go ahead.
What
Yeah.
are you looking for?
So sing it for me, please, again.
Oh, okay.
Israel, this one.
That one.
תלישה גדולה.
Yeah. Yisrael.
So I think I missed a little.
Remember the difference between Hitana and Gedolah? Left goes low.
No. And
Right,
right,
and the
no.
other one goes
this
high.
one-
So Hitana, Gedolah. All right? Yeah. And the more you practice it, the easier it'll come. And you know, they're not as common of tropes, but you do, I mean, this one's got a lot of clichés. It's got a couple bazeras, a couple segols, so I thought it would be a good example for you to have. And especially since it had that quadruple munach, I thought that was good practice too. There's sometimes it'll happen where you have two munachs in like, let's see. Like in like an etnachta phrase. And in that case, you wouldn't do muna, you just do muna, muna, etnachta. You would keep it on one note. So you let the second one be the mover on the munachs when that happens, like when it's in a different sort of phrase. But when it's in a special trope phrase, muna, muna, or when it's in a revi'i, right? Again, I would also give it like a one note thing if it's outside of any phrases. Munachs are sometimes outside of a phrase altogether. You could just hang on to one note and then just move when you get to the next phrase. So munachs are a little tricky. You just have to recognize what the context is for those. Okay. All right. Any questions or any requests before we move back to blessing before Haftarah?
I have one kind of, maybe in the future, is there time before or after to review? Like in my case, I'm thinking just to make sure that I'm saying the Haftarah tropes correctly.
Yeah, so the previous classes, we reviewed multiple times on the Haftarah tropes, and then also the recordings for those tropes are available on our adult ed page. All the resources, all the recordings are all on there. So you can work with the recordings, you can listen to it a few times and practice it on its own a few times before you come to applying it, which is what, we're only doing that now because we've gone through them a lot of times by this point. So you'll have a chance to catch that up when you both watch the recordings and or, use the recordings that are on the webpage for help practicing. Yeah, great question. Okay, so we're gonna go through the blessing before Haftarah. You guys all have that highlighted, right? Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, what to highlight. I'm gonna grab some highlighters for him, so he has a chance to highlight.
Yeah, sure. Here you go.
Okay. So the first line is gonna be yellow. Yeah, you can just copy. That works. There's no rule against copying off of your neighbor's paper.
You're allowed to cheat today. Thou shalt cheat. 11th commandment.
Is everybody on Zoom doing okay? Keeping up okay?
Hanging in.
Okay, great. Okay. So we'll wait for you to catch up on the highlighting, so that way when we're doing it, you can see it as you're doing it.
Why don't you just look on mine?
Oh,
Here.
You can just copy, there's a lot of yellows in there, so.
Are you a colorblind male or not? I'm not being sexist, but I just have all these colorblind people in my family.
Oh, is it more
Not that
common?
I,
Yeah.
He's coming in today.
My brother, my husband.
Yeah, it's.
Maybe because of the intermarriages and stuff like.
Well,
that.
all Ashkenazi Jews are like at least 32nd cousins or something like that.
We're all related.
No, the 2010 DNA study says on average Ashkenazim are fourth cousins. The genealogist here has to toss that in.
Yeah. Well, something it said at least 32nd cousins. Obviously, it would be more likely to be less than that. I'm sure you're right. If you would know.
Genealogy.
My cousin's maiden name is Freed, and when she was dating her now husband, they had to like check to make sure they weren't related because his last name is also Freed. So she didn't even have to change her name.
But then you get FRIED and then FREED.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go through the blessing before reading the Haftarah. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Baruch atah Eloheinu ha'olam asher b'chiri v'rasa v'divrei ha'ne'emin v'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek. They would say amen, then you would go straight into your after. All right, so that's the blessing before. Okay, now take a look at the blessing after.
Is be'emet.
Be'emet. Normally it would be be'emet. Right, but here it is be'emet, because you see where the trope is. So it's because, I think it's because of the particularities of that phrase. Right, and where it is in the phrase. That sometimes it does migrate. Sometimes the stress does migrate. So you just have to pay attention to where the trope symbol is. It'll tell you where the syllable stress goes. Yeah, is that your question about that? Because, yeah, you're right, normally is emet, right? Be'emet, right? I think it's because of the bet, be'emet. That probably. Yeah, okay, no. All right, so let's go through the blessing after Haftarah now. I'm gonna break it down for you into a handful of melodic patterns. Do you guys all have pencils?
Pencils and
Yes,
pencils.
I have pencils here.
What, pencil or pen?
I'm usually.
I actually prefer pencil because that way you can erase, but anyone down there need it? Anyone down here need it?
They want some more.
Two pencils.
Well,
Long pencils. You have one.
Yeah.
okay. You all have one? Okay. This side came prepared. Good. Brownie points. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, we have a handful of melodic patterns that are used in the blessings after Haftarah, okay? So there's what I call the beginning pattern, right? Which you could label as pattern number 1. It goes like this, da, 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 right? That's what it sounds like. So on here, it's Baruch atah Adonai. Okay? So that's the first pattern. So if you want to mark that off as its own thing, that's like one phrase. Okay, and that's the first type of pattern.
Found it a little differently.
And there's always slight variations on the theme, right? But for the most part, they are typically chanted closely, something resembling that, or whatever the audio version of resembling is. Okay, so Baruch Ata Adonai, can we try that? Baruch Ata Adonai. Here we have next, the most common type of pattern, which I call number 2, pattern number 2. Da, 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 right? Eloheinu melech haolam, that's pattern 2. Eloheinu melech haolam, can we try that? Eloheinu melech haolam. Sur kol ha'olamim is the same pattern again. Sur kol ha'olamim, same thing with Sadiq bechol hadorot. So all 3 of those are pattern number 2. Yeah. So you could do ha'el ha'ne'eman or ha'el ha'ne'eman, either way. But that's gonna be the 3rd pattern, the one that goes high. Ha'el ha'ne'eman, all right?
We'll say.
Yeah, we'll
Wait,
give it a
just
second.
Those 2 words, the ha'el,
Ha'el ha'ne'eman, just those 2 words is the 3rd pattern, pattern 3.
Pattern
Yes.
3.
The one that goes high, ha'el ha'ne'eman or ha'el ha'ne'eman, either way is fine. All right, then we've got ha'omer ve'oseh is 2. Hamdaber umkayim is also 2. And then we come to an ending pattern. Pattern 4, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, right? Da 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 da. Okay. Let's try shekol. Shekol devarav emet v'tzedek. Okay. Now we come to ne'eman atahu, pattern number 1 again. Ne'eman atahu. Then we've got Adonai Eloheinu. Can you guess what pattern that's gonna be?
Adonai Eloheinu.
2. Right? It's pattern 2. Adonai Eloheinu. V'ne'emanim devarecha is also gonna be number 2. V'ne'emanim devarecha. And then we've got Vidavar echad midvarecha. That's gonna be the 3rd pattern. Vidavar echad midvarecha. So you really don't move until you get to recha on the syllable stress. Da 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 da. All right, let's try Vidavar. Vidavar echad midvarecha. Good. Achor lo yashuv rekam is gonna be pattern 2. Achor lo yashuv rekam.
What was,
Number
Okay.
1.
Lo yashuv rekam is 2.
what was? Derived.
V'ne'emanim devarecha is 3. No, it's 2. It's 2. V'ne'emanim devarecha is 2. V'davar midvarecha, that's 3. Sorry.
Wait, I'm getting.
V'ne'emanim devarecha is 2. V'davar echad midvarecha, that's 3. Achor lo yashuv rekam is 2. I'll give you a second to catch up. We didn't chant Achor lo yashuv rekam yet, did we? Let's try it. Yeah.
Where missed you on there?
I got the 2.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning of Ne'eman, right? Ne'eman atahu is 1. Adonai Eloheinu is 2. V'ne'emanim devarecha 2. V'davar echad midvarecha 3. Achor lo yashuv rekam 2. That's as far as we've gone so far. So can we try Achor lo yashuv together? Ready?
I have to find them. It's like, oh, Ahor. Oh, I can see. Yeah.
Ready? We're gonna try it. Achor lo yashuv rekam. Okay. Now, there's a couple of different ways you could do this, but ki el melech ne'eman, you could do it as pattern 3. Okay. So you put that, you can label that as 3. Ki el melech ne'eman. Can we try that? Ki el melech ne'eman. Then v'rachaman ata is 2. V'rachaman ata. Okay. Here we have the Baruch Ata pattern. It's its own thing. So you don't really even need to label it. All the Baruch Atas are going to be like this, except for the first one, because the first one starts off with pattern 1. But all the other Baruch Atas are going to be this pattern, right? Baruch atah Adonai. If anyone remembers, I want chicken, I want liver, meow, meow, please deliver, right? Baruch atah Adonai.
Happy, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
Does anybody else know what I'm talking about? Okay, okay. I make that reference to kids these days and they don't understand, but at least you guys do.
You said.
It's an old commercial.
What was that, Sherry?
It was an old commercial, I think.
Not that old, because I remember it from my childhood and I'm not so old, but yeah.
You're younger than me.
So let's try that. Baruch atah Adonai. And you're gonna wait a tiny second. They'll respond. Baruch hu Baruch Shemo. Yes. Okay. And then we have pattern 4 again. Ha'el ha'na'aman bechol devarav. Amen. They'll say. Okay. So that last part is pattern 4. Ha'el ha'na'aman bechol devarav. Amen. Okay. So we've done the whole first chunk. We keep going. All right. Rachem al Zion, that's pattern 1. Beit Chayenu is 2. Vela aluvat nefesh toshia is 3. Bimhera b'yameinu is 2. Baruch atah Adonai, the same Baruch, right? Then Mesameach Zion Bevaneha. Amen. That's 4. Okay. That one's pretty easy because there weren't as many to stumble through. All right. Next one. Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu is 1.
Wait, together? It goes together? or not?
Adonai Eloheinu, yes, it's part of the first.
Samcheinu,
Da, 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 da. That's pattern 1. Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu is 1. Be'eliyahu Hanavi Avdecha is 2. Beit David Meshichecha is 2. Bimhera Yavo is 3. Give me a second. Are we good?
Give you a speeding ticket.
Libenu is 2.
Wait.
Kis Olo Yeshev Zar is 3. So Al Kis Olo Yeshev Zar is 3.
Sorry. Go back to the Bimhera.
Bimhera Bimhera. Oh wait, Bimhera Yavo is 3. Ve'yagel Libenu is 2. Al Kis Olo Yeshev Zar is 3. So it went from 3 to 2 to 3 again.
Inside my mind. That Bimhera Yavo.
Yep, that's 3.
That 3.
Yes. Ve'yagel Libenu.
Okay,
2.
that's 2. That's correct.
And the next one is Al Kis Olo Yeshev Zar is 3. Again. This one is a long phrase, but it's all 2. Velo yinchalu od acherim at kevodo. That whole thing is 2. Then we've got ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo is 3 again. So it went from 3 to 2 to 3 to 2 to 3. Okay. Shelo yichbenero leolam va'ed is 2. Your Baruch atah Adonai, same as the other ones. Magen David is 4.
I lost. I'm still circling. The same.
I want us to plunge through the rest of it, just because I do want to get to some horror trope stuff today, just at the end, so we're running out of time.
Has to be confused, huh?
Well, what are you confused on?
No, nothing.
No, I'm just, I didn't finish. I'm
What do
like,
you still need?
I'm at the game.
Ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo is 3.
Is what? Which
3.
one was 3?
Ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo, that's 3. Then shelo yichbanero leolam va'ed is 2. Baruch atah Adonai. Magen David is 4. Okay,
Magen David is 4.
just Magen David. Baruch atah Adonai, that's the Baruch. That's its own thing. All right. Coming down to the final stretch here. Now here is where it gets a little interesting because the first pattern is sort of recycled a couple times in this one. Al HaTorah, the Al HaAvodah, the Al HaNevi'im. So the first half of it gets repeated twice before it finishes the phrase. So Al Torah, Val Avodah, Val Nevi'im, that whole section is still one.
Yom HaShabbat.
Yeah. The Al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh is 2. Shenatata Lanu is 3. Adonai Eloheinu is 2. Likdusha Velimnucha is 2. Lechavod Ultifaret is 4. Without a Baruch this time. All right, just like at the beginning. Okay, are we ready for the next Al Hakol? Okay, Al Hakol Adonai Eloheinu is 1. Anachnu Modim La is 2. Umvarchim Otach is 2. Now this next section, there's one of 2 ways to do it. You can either do it like this. Yiparach Shimcha Befi Kochai Tamid Leolam Va'ed. So 3 and then 2. Or you could do Yiparach Shimcha Befi Kochai Tamid Leolam Va'ed. Either way, it's a 3 and a 2. It just depends on where you divide it. So I think the way I did it in the recording was Yiparach Shimcha. So that might be easier for you to do it that way because you can practice that way with the recording.
That's, you said 2.
3. Yiparach Shimcha is 3. Optional to include Befi Kochai in that 3 if you want. But then the next part is 2. Tami Leolam Va'ed or Befi Kochai Tami Leolam Va'ed, either way. That's 2. Then you come to the last Baruch Atah Adonai. And here, instead of 4, it's going to be its own special ending. Mekadesh HaShabbat or HaShabbat. So they go Amen. So it's like makes it clear that it's the end of all the blessings. I would review it for us now. Okay, we can do that, but maybe the class might go a little bit late. Is that okay with you guys? If the class goes like, I mean, you all showed up late too, so we won't end on time. We'll end late. Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up from Zoom.
The other way, not the way you sent
Which
it.
way?
יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד.
If that's what,
Then I'm
the
so
way you like it. Either way is fine.
adjusted already.
Either way, absolutely fine. That's why I told you there are gonna be some variations in different ways, like different places. So that's totally fine. If you want to catch the rest of the designation, you can catch that on the recording, okay? Oh, really? Here, take this one.
No, I think I'm done numbering here.
Okay, that's fair. All right, so let's review it. Like, we're gonna go slowly through the whole thing, okay?
That's good.
All right. Thank you. Ready? From the beginning. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sur kol haolamim tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'oleh ve'oseh ha'medabeh u'mekayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devaracha v'davar echad midvaracha achor lo yashuv rekam ki el melech ne'eman v'rachama ata baruch ata baruch shemo ha'el Eloheinu b'chol devarav amen rachei al Zion ki hi beit chayenu vela bat nefesh toshia b'meira ve'yaminu baruch ata Adonai baruch hu baruch shemo mesameach Zion bevanecha amen samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu ve'eliyahu hanavi avdecha u'malchut beit David meshichecha b'mheira yavo ve'yagid libeinu al kis'o yeshev zon ve'lo yichalu olam chirim ad kevado ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo shelo yichve nero baruch ata Adonai baruch shemo Magen David, Amen. Al HaTorah, Al HaKadah, Ve'al Nevi'im, Ve'al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh, Shenatata Lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Likdusha Ve'limnucha, Lechavod U'Tifaret, Al HaTov, Adonai Eloheinu, Anachnu modim lach, umevarchim otach, yitbarach shimcha, lefi vachai tamid le'achbarem, baruch atah Adonai baruch shema, mekadesh hashavat, amen. Okay, pretty good understanding of those patterns. So great. So that comes with practice, and I want to give you a brief warning, I guess, on what could happen on certain occasions. Number one, say the Haftarah is being read and it's a weekday, and you wouldn't include Al HaTorah Ve'al Ha'Avodah Ve'al Nevi'im Ve'al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh. You wouldn't include that whole section. It would just end at Magen David, which is what happened when the Haftarah was read this past Thursday from Tisha B'Av. Okay, let's say it's a special holiday. Al HaTorah Ve'al Ha'Avodah Ve'al Nevi'im Ve'al Yom HaShavuot Hazeh, right? Katalanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha limnucha lesasonu simcha lechavod tifaret. So there are some different words that are inserted when it's a special holiday. So when that happens, if you're reading Haftarah, I would send you a copy of the version from the Siddur that has the insertions, and I would send you a new recording that has, just in case you would stumble with that. But I mean, you can basically, if you know these blessings and you know these melodic patterns, you can just apply them to the Hebrew that's there based on the occasion if you feel comfortable enough. But I would always make sure I send you a recording if you are reading Haftarah for those circumstances, okay? So those are things to be aware of for Shavuot, for like Rosh Chodesh, like just things that happen, that you have different words in there. Depending on if it's Shabbat and a holiday or just a holiday and not Shabbat and all those, everything in between, okay? So the blessings before Haftarah will never change, but the blessings after will change depending on the circumstances, if it's holiday or not, okay? So that's the blessings after Haftarah. I want us to get into Torah now, because I think we're ready to graduate from Haftarah, even though you should keep practicing. And if you ever have any questions that come up, you can feel free to shoot me an email, or you can call me, you can ask. My door is open for this. I would love to start including you, all of you in our Haftarah reading corps, those of you who are local. As soon as, after Simchat Torah. So you guys have some time to practice, but I'm gonna start to be the one assigning Haftarah readings after Simchat Torah. And so I would love to be able to call on any of you to be able to read Haftarah. You have the skills now. You can put two and two together, the words and the tropes. You can use whatever highlighters you want. For Haftarah, it's a lot more accessible because you don't have to worry about memorizing anything. You have to go?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay. All right. And so we're going to start. I want to start talking to you about Torah. So first of all, we know what the Torah is, right? It's the 5 books of Moses. Who can name them? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. What about their Hebrew names? Shmot,
Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim.
Very good. So if we want to translate the names of those from Hebrew into English, Bereshit means in the beginning, right? Shmot means names. Vayikra means and he called out. Bamidbar means in the desert, and Vari means words or things, right? Logistically speaking, Exodus through Deuteronomy are all, that's the story through our wanderings into the desert until we come up to the land. So that's pretty lengthy. And so Genesis is all kind of smushed into that one book, and it's not that long of a book. A lot of things happen in a very condensed format, and then a lot of other things happen in a lot less time, basically, once you hit Exodus through Deuteronomy. And then Deuteronomy, which is the book we're in right now, by the way, is basically a repetition of what had happened before. So even within the Torah, there's repetition. Now, if you want to talk about when the Torah was codified, the latest it would have been codified is 350 BCE, but it's often dated at 450 BCE based on archaeological, information. And so, even though, like, when you look at a Torah and you compare that to another Torah, they might not be the same, but there's only going to be a few different permutations of what they could look like. You know that they have the special font. We call that stam text. Does anybody know why it's called stam?
So fair,
Sefer Torah.
Oh, it's an acronym for something,
yeah.
for your head.
Tefillin and
Mezuzah.
mezuzah. So those are the three types of texts that require a kosher scroll with that font. So it's called stam. So it's an acronym, yes, just like Tanakh, right?
Yeah.
So we use it in an acronym. And there are a couple things about, well, it can only be made from kosher animals, right? And it has to be kept in good condition to be able to read from. If there's a tear, it can maybe be repaired. If something gets rubbed out or, whatever, like, it depends on if it can be repaired, but if it can't be, then it's rendered pasul. Do you know what we do with that when that happens? Geniza.
Do we
Yes.
bury it?
We bury it in Geniza, exactly. And in point of fact, actually, there's a very famous Geniza from Cairo.
Right.
That was uncovered in the last couple centuries, right? And from there, we learned a lot about what ancient life in those times was like, because we have copies of people's ketubot and their gets, right? Their marriage, the license, their marriages, or the dissolutions of their marriages. We had copies of pasul Torah scrolls and many like sidurim, like all kinds of things, prayer books, all kinds of things that were pretty well preserved because of the conditions, basically, on where they were buried in kind of like a cave sort of format. And so a lot of those things were uncovered and still readable today. So pretty amazing to see stuff like that. I often see a Geniza today saying that they're full and they don't have space for more burial. So there are, we try to avoid extraneous use of like God's name, for example, when possible. Technically speaking, it's really like when it's in a bound or what previously kosher format. So either a scroll or like an actual siddur that's like professionally bound. If it's a loose leaf of paper, I had a Geniza tell me you can just put it in a separate thing and recycle it, and that's okay.
Oh, really?
Yes, in its own separate bag. That's what they said. That's what they said.
Yeah.
So different people will have different opinions on that.
Right.
I couldn't speak to whether the Geniza here would say that. But that's what I was told in Los Angeles, at least, because they were really full and they didn't have more space for everyone's loose leaves that they use for learning, right? You add all that up, it adds up to a lot of stuff.
But you say when the Geniza says, I thought the Geniza was the thing as opposed to a person.
Well, it's not a person, it's the organization,
Organization.
which varies those things.
I see.
Yes.
And then,
Usually at cemeteries.
yes.
Yeah.
so That's like, we used to save stuff and give it to
Yes.
Berkowitz. and then we'd
Yes. Yep.
do
Yep.
Whatever.
So I'm sure you could still do that. And we try to do everything possible to prevent a Torah scroll or anything like that from becoming pasul. They're very expensive, at the very least, at least $25,000 typically, and it takes a year to write them oftentimes. And we try to do everything, and it's also a sacred text. So we want to be as protective as possible. A lot of Torahs if they're written by like what they call a vavnik. If you look at the top of every paragraph, of every column, it starts with a vav.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's interesting how that can happen. There's different ways it can be laid out.
Starts with a.
A vav, the letter vav. If you pay attention, we have a couple scrolls that are like that. So vav, 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 beginning of every column. So there are only certain things that use that. I want to talk about not just when it was codified, but a little bit about the background behind why we have tropes when we chant Torah. We talked a little bit about that in the first class, but mostly we were talking about Haftarah. So it's very likely that, and no, it is the case, I'm sure, that Torah tropes really developed first. It makes sense, right? Because Haftarah developed later. We talked about that. The reading of Haftarah happened later. So tropes were probably designed first for use with chanting the Torah. And in terms of why that is, we know that the Torah needs to sound interesting. If you think back into ancient times, like I said, at the very latest, it would have been codified 350 BCE. That's still a very long time ago. Most people in that time were not literate, even among the Jews. And so it's very important if people are going to be learning the stories and the laws that define us as a people, very important that people are paying attention to it, right? And so it needs to sound interesting. So even though the actual trope markings themselves, like I said, happened later, chironomy, right? The hand gestures, I'm sure were part of things a much earlier time than that, right? But either way, they would have made it sound interesting when they chanted. I also want to talk to you for a moment about when we chant Torah, when we read the Torah. So who can tell me when that happens?
What days of the week? Mondays?
Monday, Thursdays, and Saturday.
Okay,
Chodesh.
extra when it's a holiday, depending, yes. Yes, so there are special occasions when we read the Torah, if it's like a fast day, if it's Rosh Chodesh, right? Even on a weekday, that's not a Monday, Thursday. But those are the days, and do you know why?
Monday did start becoming.
Yeah, it was a market.
Okay, you got it. So in ancient Israel, Mondays and Thursdays were market days. So what did that practically mean? It meant that everyone was doing their shopping and gathering all their food, the things that they need for the next couple of days. They didn't have refrigeration back then, so they had to go regularly, right? And people had to know when they could reliably get food. And they couldn't like wait too long for it to spoil, whatever. So they had to go regularly on Mondays and Thursdays in the week. So those were the days they would be shopping. So if you think about a text that everyone needs to hear and learn from, you try to come to the people, right? Where they are already going to be gathering is on market days. So that's the day when you can publicly read the Torah and they will be there to hear it. Okay, so that's why we read on Mondays and Thursdays. And obviously Shabbat is Shabbat. They were already resting. They had nowhere else to go or nothing else to do. Of course, they're gonna gather to hear the Torah then, right? When it's a weekday or Shabbat Mincha, there are 3 aliyot. 3 aliyot for the Torah, right? When it's Shabbat, there are 7. When it's a holiday,
As many as you want.
well, it depends. We typically have 5 for like the high holidays when they fall on a different day of the week. But this year they fall on the first day of Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat. So how many are there going to be? 7. There are 7. So you divide them differently depending on like if it falls on Shabbat, right? We did have an acharon. So that's a hosafa. That's like a special condition where like if you have too many people that you need to honor, you add an extra one and you call an acharon. And by the way, we have 7 aliyot, but we also have the maftir.
Yeah.
The maftir is an excerpt from the 7th aliyah, unless the maftir, it needs to be read from a different section. If it's a special Shabbat, which can happen sometimes too.
So you read from a different book.
That can sometimes happen. And usually when that happens, not usually always when that happens, we use 2 different Torah scrolls. So we don't have to waste all the time of scrolling back through and finding the right place, right? And certain circumstances, there could be as many as, I think even 4, but definitely there could be 3 Torahs being read from on the same day if the right circumstances arise, like if it's Rosh Chodesh, Hanukkah or something like that, and you have 3 different Torah scrolls being read, right? So that's why most synagogues, it's quite an investment, but you need to have at least a handful of Torah scrolls to be able to read from on a given day if it falls that way.
Yeah, so, yeah, a lot.
We do have a lot
You ever
here.
walk around and see how many are here?
We do. I have had occasion to see that.
It's
So
amazing.
I want us to does anyone have any questions about Torah? We talked about, yes, Tybal.
It's not a question, it's a comment, and I'm also gonna give you my Cairo Geniza virtual background.
Very cool.
I just thought I'd tell you, but the comment is, I think it's not just the market day, but it may be part of the overall psychology of why the market days were spread out is if you want people to remember Torah, it's easier learning if it's more spread out. Do you know what I mean? If it's
definitely
more,
true. That
if
is definitely
not
true.
too many days go by, Shabbos is different, read
Yeah.
twice, even though 2 different weeks, the minchas the upcoming week, but the Monday, Thursday spreads it out.
It's a good point. I think based on archaeological sort of and anthropological sort of evidence from those times, I'm pretty sure the Monday, Thursday market day was not limited to Judea and to the Jewish people. I'm pretty sure that was the case for many other local peoples living in the Middle East in those times, and maybe even further afield, as far as I know. Because like I said, there's no refrigeration. You need to plan it out accordingly so that you have the food that you need when you need it and it doesn't all spoil. And also based on harvest times and things like that. So I think it's more about the availability, but you are right that the spreading out of the time being even like that definitely aids in comprehension and ability to continue learning it and remember it, right? Because we know that the repetition helps. So, in a given week, they would have heard the Torah 3 times, right? That of a certain portion. Actually, 4 times really, if you include Shabbat Mincha. So Shabbat Mincha also has 3 aliyot, and it does the 3 aliyot of the following week, even a little bit ahead, even though it's still Shabbat, a little bit ahead for the next week. So if you read the Torah at Shabbat Mincha, you'll be reading the same thing on Monday and on Thursday.
So the question, when at my previous synagogue, somebody found a mistake in the Torah. And do you have to stop and pull out another one Torah? And
If you find, that's a great question. If you find a mistake in the Torah, it might be possible.
yeah,
Like what kind of mistake are we talking
I
about?
don't remember, but somebody was, I remember the guy was following along
Uh-oh.
and the Cantor was reading and he kept saying, it's, and she said, this is what it says.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, we had other Torahs, but I don't think they didn't pull out another
In the
Torah.
moment, it would be hard to do that, but
Yeah.
it might be what's required.
Technically, right.
I don't know. I have never been in that situation,
Yeah.
so it'd be hard for me to pontificate on that,
I'm
but
gonna find it.
yeah, but that's definitely not what you want. Yeah, Tybal.
And sorry, old person pandemic, I don't remember which place it was in pandemic. So I'm assuming it wasn't B'nai Yeshurun because other people would remember. So maybe it was my Los Angeles. Somebody found an error and there was this very erudite discussion about you do different things depending on what the error is. If it's a missing letter, missing word, extra letter, extra word, out of order. There was this whole huge calculus of all the different things that could happen. It was really very interesting.
We happen to have a local rabbi Soferet here in our own community. Her name is Rabbi Beck Richmond. And she came here for our tikkun this past Shavuot. It was a very interesting session. And so she I think is about to be called on to sort of look at one of our scrolls to just check something, make sure that it's up to scratch and kosher before we read from it again. So yeah, we've got, it happens every now and again, right? And by the way, it's, animal skins and sometimes they need a little bit of help in terms of how they're treated in order to make sure that they don't fade or that they don't get too much, materials on them and stuff. So, okay, I want us to
Have to stop the reading and switch to a kosher.
yeah, that makes sense. I think that's, I would think that's what you would do.
You read another sentence.
That's good. It would be a very awkward moment, that's for sure. My instinct was that you would have to change to a new scroll. Yeah, but that would be. When?
Continue a little bit.
That's a good question.
I
Yeah.
think these are great questions for the 2 new rabbis.
Put them on the spot. Have them join the Trope class and then they can find out. All right, so let's go back to the Trope packet here and let's get through at least a couple of Trope families before we call it a day. All right. So this time we're chanting the same trope phrases, but now we're chanting them in Torah trope mode. Remember, I said, Amen. That's a good way to put you into Torah trope mode. Tevir, right? That's how line 1 sounds. So can we all try that together? Ready? All right, line 2 is let's try that. Line 3. Everybody? Just any questions about that one? All right, turn the page. So pasuk phrases. Mercha and tipcha stay the same here. Mercha, tipcha, mercha, sof pasuk. By the way, some places do sof pasuk. So when you are like in Los Angeles, they're very fond of the down sof pasuk. Sof pasuk was the way I learned it growing up, and that's the way we tend to do it here. So that's the way we'll have it for you in the recordings. The recordings, by the way, I have not put on our adult ed page yet, but I will endeavor to get them up. If not today, then even though tomorrow's my day off, I'll still do it tomorrow, okay? Because I know you guys are gonna want to practice right away. So I'll put them up for you.
They look the same,
They look the same and they are the same.
but we just sing them in the I and in the low.
Yeah. We sing them, are you talking about Torah versus Haftarah? Yep. They are, the names of the tropes stay the same, right? We're still calling them Mercha and Tipcha. You see that trope symbol, you recognize what to call it, right? But it's gonna depend on whether you're reading a Torah reading or a Haftarah reading. All right, so let's do line 1. Ready? Mercha tipcha, mercha sof pasuk. Line 2. Tipcha, mercha sof pasuk. Line 3. Mercha tipcha, sof pasuk. Line 4. Mercha tipcha, sof pasuk. Okay. By the way, also not just sof pasuk, but sometimes people go mercha tipcha. So those are kind of some variations that you might hear, depending on, like if you go and you visit another shul, you might hear that. I think in Reform, they tend to be often pretty fond of mercha tipcha, mercha sof pasuk, or sof pasuk, right? So you'll hear different variations, but if you, as long as you stay consistent, whatever variation you choose is totally fine. Just stay consistent. Okay. Katon phrases, and we'll end it at Revi'i phrases for today. Okay. So line 1's gonna sound like this. Mapach pashta munach katon. Let's try that. Mapach pashta munach katon. Good. Line 2 is gonna sound like this. Pashta munach katon. Let's try it. Pashta munach katon. Line 3. Munach katon. Line 4. Mapach pashta. Line 5. Pashta katon. All right. The kadma. Who remembers what the difference between kadma and pashta is? Yes. So a pashta always occurs on the far left of the word. Kadma will be in the middle or the beginning of the word. Some texts do show a thicker pashta and a skinnier kadma, but you can't always rely on that. So pay attention to where it's placed. If you see 2 in the same word, what does it mean? Is it a kadma or pashta, or one kadma and one pashta? It's pashta because
it's at the end.
Because it's at the end and the syllable stress goes where the first one is. Yes, but it won't be kadma. It'll just be pashta. Okay. If you see 2 tropes in one word, the second one is katon, and the first one could either be a kadma or pashta. What does it have to be? Kadma, right? Because we talked about pashta is always at the end. If a katon's at the end, it can't be pashta. Okay. So it'll be kadma, mapach, pashta, munach, katon. Let's try that. Kadma, mapach, pashta, munach, katon. Line 7. Kadma, mapach, pashta, katon. Remember the difference between yativ and mapach? Yativ is always At the beginning, far right of the word, always, always at the beginning. Some texts do close the yativ into a little triangle, but not all texts will do that. So you should always rely on knowing the placement. Yativ is always going to be on the right at the beginning. Yativ munach katon. Let's try that. Yativ munach katon. And then line 9. Yativ katon. Any questions? Okay, we'll go one more page in. Okay. Now, Padma in this one is not the same. It's slightly different. It's similar, but it's not quite the same, right? We had Padma Mapach. This is Kadma, right? Kadma ve'azla, Muna Revi'i. The nice thing about Revi'i here is that it really is 1, 2, 3, 4, and Revi'i comes from the word for 4, right? So Revi'i means fourth or quarter, right? Is it fourth? So Revi'i, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it really sounds like what it looks like. Okay, I'll do line 1 again. Kadma ve'azla, Muna Revi'i. Let's try it. Kadma ve'azla, Muna Revi'i. Okay, line 2, no munach. Ready? Kadma ve'azla, Revi'i. Line 3, munach Revi'i. Okay, here we have the munach before munach, and there's a mafsik, right? But munach, do re mi do re is what that sounds like. Okay, so it'll sound like this: munach, munach Revi'i. Let's try that. Munach, munach Revi'i. So we'll put a pin in it for now. I'm gonna put all of the tropes up, but you should just practice the ones we covered, I think. You're welcome to listen to head, but I wouldn't, I mean, you can if you want to. But we'll cover the rest of them next time. And we'll also start working on the fill-in worksheet again too. We'll work on the fill-in worksheet for some Torah trope phrases, and I'll also pick out some examples for you from the Torah, and we can start on those. We only have 2 more sessions left after today. So, so we're gonna really, what we're gonna really do next time is we're gonna work on a lot of practicalities, and then we're gonna try, I'm gonna show you some samples of the stam and sort of give you some best practices for transferring over on the texts. So the ones that we look at next time for practicality, you can practice them at home, and then we'll try them on the stam text at the last class. And I'll show you what that all looks like, and I'll share some of my tricks of the trade for how to master them. Okay. Any questions before we go?
Could you repeat the difference between Kadma Mapach and the Kadma ve'azla?
Yeah. Kadma Mapach, Kadma Mapach, right? Kadma ve'azla. So they're not quite the same, but they're not that dissimilar.
More and goes into the ve'azla.
Yeah, so it's kind of like paying attention to the context, just like you would for munach. Right? The munach is always going to depend on its context before you figure out what it's going to sound like.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this at the beginning. Was
Yeah.
this the only time there were multiple munachs? Because there was the phrase that had like 4 in a row.
Yeah, that was in a Haftarah phrase, but that can happen just as easily in Torah.
Is that like exotic that we'd have to worry about, or how would that get if that came up?
For that, you might. It really depends on where in the Torah you're reading from. I can't blanket statement. I will also talk a little bit about some special tropes that you could encounter that aren't in this packet. I will go through that next time. But you don't really need to learn them on their own because they're so rare. But the rest of your question is what, like how frequently you can expect?
Yeah, what to do if there are multiple
Yeah.
munach in a row?
You, there were 2 schools of thought, one of which is you do the munach, the special one here, munach, or munach, if it's haftarah, anytime until you get to the munach immediately preceding the next trope. Munach revi'i, or, you know, whatever.
It's like stretching the first one.
Yes, but some people pay attention to whether you have a mafsik, which is that bar. But sometimes you have that in a non-munach phrase. So there's not really a good explanation for why it's there. So you could do it either way. You do have some flexibility with the tropes. But we'll go through a little bit about some special tropes. You know, like I've mentioned a couple times before, these are not the end all be all for all the trope phrases you might encounter. They're just the most common types you might see. So they give you enough of building blocks to know what you're doing and then go forward and figure the rest out yourself, okay?
Still get a tape or you'll.
Yes, the recordings will be up there. And I'll have some more blank fill-in worksheets. I mean, we can do the ones we filled in last time, but we don't have to. So we'll do more practical examples next time, and we'll finish Torah trope, the rest of them that we didn't cover today next time, okay? Thank you for joining us, and thank you to anyone watching this later on the recordings on YouTube, and we'll see you next class, all right? Take care.
That's great.